Ramya, sorry, I think he's
Yes,
out.
sir.
No, no, go
Did
ahead.
you did you send the this one link to Muni Reddy sir?
I did. I sent, sir. I sent him.
Okay, right. Anyway,
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to this session on professionalism and ethics. It is a topic very dear to me. And let me warn you that I'll hold forth and bore you guys for the next maybe 2 or 2.5 hours. Okay. If it goes beyond an hour, we will stop and have another session. But I really don't want to hold back and hurry through things uh, because I think that this is a very important topic which is not discussed the way it should be. Okay, so I think it's good to spend time on it. There is nothing, which is etched in stone about professionalism and ethics. Everything depends on the society you're living in, depends on the time frame in the life of the world that you're living in. What is ethics today may not be ethics tomorrow. Okay, and in that sense, professionalism and ethics are inseparable in many senses, even though there are some distinct differences. So, what I would like you to think, I hope you guys have read about it, because if you have not read about it, when we won't have a discussion, it will be a didactic lecture, and that's not the point of these sessions. I hope you have read about it. And as we go along, you're most welcome to put your views across. Okay, because as I said, this is not etched in stone, and there are differences, and there may be areas where you may or may not agree with what I'm saying. And then, of course, we'll then leave it to individuals to make their own professional and ethical judgments. It's not that I tell you something and that it's an order. It never works like that in this field. Okay, so let's first simply talk about what professionalism is. Each one of us will think differently about what professionalism is. So let me start asking the youngest. Ainas, what is professionalism to you?
Uh, so, using acting in an appropriate manner, having a proper decision making uh, ability,
Okay.
such that it is taking into mind that it is benefiting the patient always, like primarily taking the patient into account and how it is beneficial to them, sir.
Okay. So what is in your mind the difference between a professional and a non-professional? A
Uh,
carpenter is not generally considered a professional, whereas a doctor or a lawyer is. So what do you think is the difference between it?
uh, so basically they are we are focusing on trying to sort of provide like the optimal care which is possible, sir.
A carpenter gives optimal care to the wood. All right.
Yes.
Nitya, you want to have a go?
Sir, basically, professional means who follows the law and ethics, and certain rules and regulations need to be followed, sir, and also
Okay.
being accountable for
Okay.
whatever we do.
Okay.
That is basically taking responsibility
Mhm.
and complying with the ethics as well as the rules and set standards.
Yeah. So you have to be clear about certain special characteristics of professionalism. Okay. One of them is that it is a special training in a particular skill. Okay. And the most important aspect of it is that it is self-regulated. By definition, a professional does not need supervision. Okay. That is perhaps the highest kind of responsibility you can give to a person. Okay, please understand this. These are all, there are two or three definitions. I'm going to share all of them with you because all of them give you certain special or very clear indications about what a professional is. So one of them is that there is a higher level of education, and more important than that, there is self-regulation. So in that sense, medical profession has failed because we now have a consumer court sitting on us. Okay, if you really look at it strictly, that's what's happened. So it has to be self-regulated, and it has a degree of skill which is considered higher than that of an average worker. A carpenter can be considered an average worker, but a surgeon is more than that. perhaps a better comparison is an orthopedic surgeon. And there is good judgment. And as Aina's pointed out, yes, a part of it is good behavior as well. And so you now have already 3 or 4 characteristics: self-regulation, higher degree of skill, good judgment, and a degree of behavior which is perhaps a little higher than that of an average worker. And there is an unsaid, many times unwritten, sometimes written, okay, set of social standards or a code of conduct which you have to adhere to. In our case, it is a written code of conduct. As you know, we have a written code of conduct for medical professionals. I'm going to talk more about it a little later and ask you some questions on it as to whether you know about the existence and if you've read them. So there is a code of conduct that is written down. That is a very, very important thing. So now, Samir, can you list 3 or 4 things that differentiates a professional from a non-professional? Are you there?
Here or are you on holiday?
He's on holiday. I saw him logged in.
Are you
All right,
unmuting, Samir?
all right. Not Sanya.
Hello?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
you're there, Samir. Yeah, tell me. So you can list. I've already told you, just for a recap, something that separates a professional from a non-professional.
Yes, sir. The professional should have a degree of skill learning and they should undergo
Yes,
training.
next. Quickly, yeah. Higher level of skill,
Yes, sir, and they
okay.
should be responsible. Uh,
You're probably not
yes, sir, they are
listening.
accountable for.
Not listening, perhaps. Okay. Just recount what I said in the last 5 minutes here. That's all I wanted. Who else is there? Is Vinod there? Come on, Vinod. Quickly, 3 or 4 points. Vinod, are you there?
Mhm.
Yeah, 3 or 4 points.
Yes, sir. Sir, it should be the highest level, and there should in such a way that there is no other guy who is observing or following him.
Right, self-regulated, high degree of skill. Okay.
Yes, sir. And he should be excellent in his technique or
degree of
surgery
behavior which is higher than that of an average worker. Okay, behavior
and accountability, sir.
accountability by what? It's on the slide now. It's on your screen now.
So whatever he's
Going by a code of conduct.
yes, sir.
Many times written down, sometimes not written down.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that is what
Yes.
a profession is or a professional is. That's important. What's happened in the recent, literally 2 or 3 decades from the time I was a student to a time when I'm about to retire. Okay, maybe 3 decades. There's a paradigm shift in practice. Earlier, there was one of paternalism. A surgeon said something, it was an order. It was not a request. It was not a suggestion. It was an order. Okay. And the doctor was the boss. The surgeon was the boss. Now the patient is the boss. So your whole attitude, which means essentially your behavior, which essentially means that your professionalism is defined differently today than 3 decades ago. Okay, and so we have to learn what that is, and this is decided by society, not by us. The society now thinks that care should be patient-centered and that the patient should have autonomy, and these two have resulted in a paradigm shift in our practice. Okay, so to equip yourself for this paradigm shift, we are now talking about continuing professional development as against continuing medical or surgical education. So, is Nikita here? I don't think I see her.
Sir,
Sir, she's
Nikita,
gone for an emergency case, sir.
Gone for an emergency. All right. Praveen, tell me, what do you think are the differences between a continuing professional development and continuing medical or surgical education? Whenever I say medical, take it as surgical also because we're surgeons. Yeah, go on.
Sir, it's about gaining new skills, practice.
Okay. You do that in
And-
CME also, right? New
Yes, sir.
skills in what? In new surgical skills?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Not really true. You learn surgical skills in a CME or a CSE. What happens in a CPD is my question. Sanya.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in a continuing professional development, it is uh, uh, it like a self development that is happening, so self directed,
Correct.
where you yourself are trying to make changes in your professionalism.
Absolutely. Next. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
And whereas in the continuing surgical part, where you're like learning all your skills
Yeah.
related to the
Right.
surgeries.
Next point. Yeah. Okay. Now, the CPD has to be outside the formal training protocol. Okay, which gives you the attitudes and skills and behavioral equipment to deal with the paradigm shift that I spoke about. And it really broadens your horizons, which means that you're not just reading surgical textbooks, you're not just watching operative videos, you're not just discussing pancreatitis and APD and colonic gist and things like that, but you're also looking at things like communication, for example, things like practice essentials. What are the things that you need to set up practice, for example? How does the Consumer Protection Act affect you? What do you have to do when the patient refuses your surgery? You understand? And so our attempt now as teachers is to bring all these aspects under the formal training. And the purpose of this class is that we should go beyond it. You should broaden your horizons, and if that is understood, then the point that Sania made, which is a very important point, okay, comes into action. And this tells you what CPD is as compared to a CME or a CSE. And this is the second point that Pasania made. It's a learner-centered and learner-driven. That's more important. So you have to keep on reading up yourself. It's not that you go to a class and learn from it. It is a lifelong process. You keep on doing it, and we've all done it. You know, Ravi is doing it. I'm doing it even today until I will probably do it even after I hang up my boots, okay, just out of interest. And it's not like a class or a session in a conference or something. There are a variety of learning formats and media used in educational activities, and it's limitless. Today, with the advent of all the, the internet and so many platforms that are available, everything can be learned on the internet just by yourself, sitting in your home next to a computer, okay, or going anywhere and next to your phone even. You don't even need a computer. So please understand that we must now move away. The paradigm shift for our learning must be away from a CME to a CPD. So Nitya, to answer you said you went somewhere to a class, or your IHS you said was better. I'm not discounting those things at all. They are good, they are essential, but you must go beyond that to be an effective professional. Got that?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
that is the important thing. Ravi, your comments so far.
I think, yeah, sir, I wanted to know whether you brought the example of a carpenter as a, comparing him to a surgeon or a, orthopedic surgeon, for example, as professional. Can though it may be a bit, very broad, this one, can we say that people who actually deal with inanimate objects may be of a lesser professional compared to persons who deal with, people and live objects. Will that?
Broadly, one can say that, but there are some inanimate things. A professional painter, for example, he's a professional. Okay, and working on ceramics, for example, extremely expensive ceramics, no life involved. But if it chips that ceramic or does something to the painting, then there's an issue.
Yeah. So
similarly, musician, for example, there are professional musicians. Yeah. So I think it goes a little beyond that. Degree of skill and Yeah, and self-learning and self-regulation, and that is a lot more dominant, I think. Yeah. Any comments, Nitya, Sanya, anybody?
It's correct, sir. Like
Go on, you're
we need
muted.
like more than just learning, we need to develop ourselves, including the
Yeah.
communication skill. As we grow up from a junior resident to a senior resident to a consultant, the way we communicate with our patient itself makes a difference.
Yes,
So
very true.
every that these non-formal skills are something that we are not being taught on a daily basis. This is
Yeah,
something that we need to observe and then acquire.
agree. You're very correct there. Yeah.
Sir,
So, yeah, go on.
I just want to quote my consultant, Robert Hall, in York. There was a situation where a patient needed an ERCP, and I thought, this is, process of learning. Basically, I thought, let me save the trouble for him, and I arranged the ERCP with the person who was doing ERCP at the time. And then when we went on the rounds, I told him the ERCP is arranged. Then he said, my job is not yet advertised. So,
Yeah.
and then he said, do you know the difference between a registrar and a senior registrar? Because that was the thing there. He said, a registrar thinks he's better than the consultant. The senior registrar begins to wonder. So, the degree of maturity that comes, I
Yeah.
think that is part of the professional development.
Yeah. Very true.
What to do and what not to do in given circumstances.
Yeah.
Not just about what you know and
Yeah.
how to execute what you know.
Ostler, I keep reading him and I never get tired of it. There is a whole lot of document called Ostlerism. This
Yeah.
gentleman has had such tremendous insight into life and life as a doctor, as a physician. He has given a lot of lovely statements, and I strongly recommend that you read it. Okay. So he says practice of medicine is an art, not a trade. That's the important thing. And today, in the present, you know, professional life of all of us, uh, unfortunately, surgery has become a trade in a lot of situations, and we should move away from it. It should never be there. And it's a calling. It is a calling. A calling is an inspiration from within. It's not something that I teach you or somebody else asks you to do or forces you to do. It is a spontaneous inner feeling where you really, help your fellow human being, a suffering human being, with the greatest application of your skill and knowledge and goodness that you exercise. This is not just rhetoric, this is not a political statement, but it is something all of us must endeavor to do. All of us must endeavor to do. That's a very, very important thing. Okay. So, what is the standing of medical profession today? That is what I just indicated. I don't think I need to ask you to do that. Okay. Now, people say Vaidyo Narayano Harihi, which means doctor is God. That is one extreme situation. All right. And this, many people say that the compliment or the gratefulness that society has to doctors, it may go unsaid. It may go unsaid, but it is always felt inside by patients. Many times I wonder if it is true, and I'm quite right in thinking that it's not necessarily true. Okay. And the other extreme, that's one extreme. The other extreme is this, where doctors get beaten up, they even get killed. This is also not generally true. I mean, it has happened many, many times in our country. But if you look at the number of patients who are treated, the percentage of such assaults and such very unsavory acts is really limited. There may be just a higher degree of verbal abuse, if not a physical abuse, and verbal abuse is bad enough. But if you look at the number of people who do it to you, it's not very, very common. So, but it's there, very much there. And I quoted these two to let you know the reality is somewhere in between. Okay. The reality is somewhere in between. You do have your unpleasant experiences of being abused and things like that. So, what do you think as professionals we should do to improve the situation? Vinod.
Um, Sir, maybe uh, f- you should be away from money first of all when we are thinking of a surgery.
Okay, don't be business-like. Okay.
Yes, sir. And I feel maybe it may be a broad statement. Maybe even government is going towards making more money from making the doctors, and even the doctors are going through
Okay,
to
commercialization of education. Fair enough. You would like to avoid that. Okay.
yes, sir. And even from the childhood, the development will be, even from the patient side and even from the doctor side, the ethics should be more in a good way.
All right. Okay. So what you can do as an individual, I agree about policies and, setting up of professional, of commercial fee for service kind of hospitals, business like approach, all that I understand. But what we have to do is at the end of the day, it is your interaction with the patient which protects you. Okay, that's what I've written here. Okay, your protection at an individual level. I agree that the system can shortchange you, but by and large, it is your attitudes and behavior which protect you. And in that, these are the four basic tenets, basic issues of our daily living, our conduct, code of conduct that we put on ourselves. Remember, we are not looking at somebody else telling us what to do. These are the four things: altruism, virtue, professionalism, and ethical behavior. These are the four things that protect you. Not 100%, but largely 99%. All right, they largely protect you. So we need to understand what each of these things means. And of course, I'm going to talk at length about professionalism and ethical behavior. But we need to understand the meaning of the term altruism and virtue. Okay, can anybody tell me? I can't say anybody. You'll have to ask Sania. What is altruism?
Sir, it is selfless caring of others,
Correct.
like being
Agree.
aware.
You're not looking at any returns, but you just
Yes, sir.
want to,
Just
without any returns, without
yes, sir.
expecting. Yeah. Nishkama karma is what Gita says.
Mm.
You don't expect anything, but you do your job right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Not
sir.
even money, not name, not fame,
Nothing.
nothing. All right. Now, it's very, very interesting that, okay, why are you doing it is the question you ask yourself. And Wikipedia, of all things, defines it as concern for happiness of other human beings, not just human beings. Note this: animals, resulting in a quality of life, both material and spiritual. They bring in the word spiritual. Mind you, spiritual has nothing to do with religion. All right, nothing to do with religion. It's an individual pursuit of a kind of behavior which leads you to your own self-understanding, what they call self-actualization and happiness. That's a goal of every human being, as it were. Okay, so altruism helps you do that. And it also protects you. Mind you, this is what we're doing. But then there are people who have extreme views. As long ago as 87, I recommend that you read this article in JAMA. In a free market economy, we are looking at a Western economy, effacement of self-interest or a conduct shaped primarily by the idea of altruism or virtue is inconsistent with survival. Okay, this guy says you may be talking lofty things and all that, but he says you're like that, you can't survive in a free market economy. All right. I disagree with it, but there is one point of view. And the other point of view is from our dear Dalai Lama, sir. Okay. He says it is the best source of happiness. There is no doubt about it. And I tend to agree with this view rather than Pellegrino's view. All right. So I think it is possible to survive, in fact, thrive and do well, even with altruism as one of your goals. Because at the moment, at least in our society, and I'm sure it is true in Western societies also, you make enough money with, to be, you need to have material, compensation. Otherwise, you can't survive, I agree. But you make enough to survive, even if you're altruistic, even if you do a part of your treatment, surgery, operations free, for example, even if you donate money to others for whatever. So it's really possible to lead a happy life with altruism. What is virtue? Nitya?
Sir, moral, like said, having good moral, like
Correct. That's right, exactly right. Virtue is moral excellence. And you don't have to define in a very big way. And there are several things that there are some principles that all of us follow. But the basic thing is doing what is right and avoiding what is wrong. And it is not difficult to learn that. Many times this thing we have in our mind or a heart, whatever you call it, called conscience, does tell us if we are going the wrong way. But the human tendency is to override that and do what perhaps gives you instant gratification. Okay, that's what we're all driving at. And that is a short-sighted principle. So we need to really look at long-term, what really makes you happy, and a virtuous living with moral excellence is the way to go. Okay. And so as a doctor, even though we never talk about it and we never, write answers in main questions in the exams, we're only talking about pancreatitis or whatever else, it is equally important to be a professional and an ethical person, as important as you are a skilled surgeon. And if I have got this thought in your minds that we should be thinking about our behavior at every step of the way, at every interaction with every other human being in all spheres of life, not just in your work, then I think this lecture or this discussion has served its purpose. So we talked about professionals following a code of conduct which may be written or not written. So as practitioners in India, we need to know, is there any document? And our regulatory body is the NMC about professionalism. Does it say anything about professionalism and ethics? Has anybody read anything from the NMC about professionalism? Vinod? Did you understand my question? Is there in your view, have you seen or read or even heard about an NMC document which tells you what professionalism is?
No, sir,
Yes
I
or
didn't.
no? You don't.
No.
All right. Let's ask Samir. Quickly, because I know I'm going to overshoot badly. I will overflow into another class. Go on, tell me, Samir, have you heard about it? Ayanas, anybody?
So there's this code of like regulation, sir.
All right.
Like medical ethics regulation. Like
All right.
they
Have you
have
seen
like
it?
so like a little bit of it, sir. Like they have
Little bit.
multiple chapters and
Yes.
they have segregated it into like responsibilities in general. What are the
Yes.
responsibilities to the
Very good. You've seen
patient?
it.
Yes, sir.
I can see that you've seen it, but I think it's
Yes, sir.
good that you read it
Yes.
in its entirety. So
sir,
remind me.
even when we, sorry to interrupt, sir, even
Nah,
when
go
we
on.
got our MBBS
Yes.
certificate, they gave us booklet which
Yes.
told the code of conduct. That there's a
Yes.
small booklet along with the degree that they give us, and then
Yes.
they tell us to read that. And
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I was about to say that they would have given you this book. It's now
yes,
available free on the net. Remind me, I will post the document on our group. Okay. And all
yes,
of you, please read. It's a long document. Please read it. It's very, very important that you do it. But I'll tell you that it is quite long and quite lengthy, and it has 5 chapters and 11 guidelines. I've read that document. And the 5 chapters are on professional conduct, duties towards patients, responsibilities with other doctors, doctor-doctor relationship, duties towards the public, and professional misconduct. It also tells you what misconduct is, and it prescribes several levels of punishment for misconduct. All that is given there, and I think every registered medical practitioner must read it and understand it. And it has 11 guidelines. These are on how to write a prescription. And I can tell you, if you read that guideline, very few of us follow that guideline. There is also a prescription template. You have to use that template. All right, starting with generic names, not professional, not what do you call it? Commercial names.
Brand name.
Yeah, brand or commercial names. Okay, there's a code on medical ethics, guidelines on penalties. I told you 5 levels of penalties for misconduct, what an informed consent process is, and how do you deal yourself with social media. It's actually a very lengthy and a very good, chapter. How to give leave certificates, how to write medical records. And there's a whole list of certificates and records that a medical practitioner can and should give. I would really ask you to read these two. Excuse me, I'm sorry. CPD and telemedicine. How do you conduct yourself on telemedicine? Very lengthy guideline. How do you assess a CPD guide? How do you assess a CPD? It even tells you what should be in a CPD, how it should be good, and whether you can get CPD points based on the quality of the CPD, the content, what it should be. So I would recommend that you read it, but it makes difficult reading and it is perhaps too much in detail. And so I have taken issues from the ACS, the American College of Surgeons, which gives you broad guidelines based on about 6 or 7 aspects. Have any of you read this ACS guidelines about professionalism?
No, sir.
No.
I'm not ready.
So I'll send you that document also. Okay. It is a lovely, lovely document. And the next 10 minutes, I'm going to spend on what these broad areas are. As I told you, the NMC document gives you even, specifics about this is the kind of form you have to use. This is the kind of prescription template you have to use. Okay. And this just gives you broad areas where you have to conduct yourself as a doctor. And what it specifies is that as a total doctor or a professional, you must keep yourself updated in knowledge and skills and have certain behavioral patterns, which when they all overlap, this is a Venn diagram. This is called a Venn diagram, as you know, where all these 3 things, skills overlap, you become a complete professional. Okay. So the first thing, it looks at all three basic skills. It's a learned discipline. So you have to read a lot. You have to watch a lot, do a lot, get the cognitive, that is theoretical knowledge, and the psychomotor skills, which is the practical skills. It's a long, arduous process. Nevertheless, you need to have it. And the next one that we talked about, several times I have been saying this, it is self-regulation. Really, it is a pity that we have so many people sitting on our necks. In an ideal situation, utopic world, you don't need anybody. You are yourself very good, but that doesn't happen. And so you regulate yourself, and that regulation is many times an unwritten social contract with society. So society expects some things of you. You agree as a professional doctor and abide by those things which the society expects of you. Obviously, there are so many conflicts, consumer courts and all that, which means that either the expectation is unreasonable or our behavior in meeting a reasonable expectation has been inadequate. One of these two, there's a mismatch between performance and expectation. And that's why you have all these problems that we have. And we come back to the issue of serving others above self-interest. Vinod, can you give me an example of serving others above self-interest and reward? This is where altruism comes and where Pellegrino said this is nonsense. And I'll also tell you a hint. I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about earning.
Sir, doing service, sir, without any
Sorry?
doing service.
Yes. What is the highest level of doing service that you can think of? Where you can endanger yourself, but still you're doing it. And you are doing it. You and I are doing it. Simple, yeah?
So
We had an example 2-3 years ago. I can't give
maybe
you.
doing surgery, sir.
Yeah, surgery where? Today?
COVID era.
COVID era. Correct.
COVID era. So when you have epidemics, cholera epidemics in the old, plague epidemics in the epidemics in the old, doctors used to go and treat them. Latest example is COVID. HIV. How many patients with HIV we have operated on? All right. Some people didn't. That's the important thing, including in government hospitals. And I can remember the 90s and the early 2000s, where people used to refer patients to us from the government hospitals and teaching hospitals, because we were one of the very few who were operating on these really suffering people who had very bad abscesses and very painful conditions. But that is the calling. That is what is calling. No amount of money can motivate you to do that. Just not money. It's just that calling that you have, the feeling from inside that you want to help others, that helps you do it. Commitment to excellence. Okay. Nothing short of perfection is good. You don't take an anastomosis lightly. Every single stitch you focus on. Somebody has taught you this is the way to do an anastomosis. You keep doing it. Service and commitment to excellence and integrity. This is something which you will see around you not being followed. And that is a very, very important thing that you should avoid as a practitioner. If there is a complication, tell the patient that you had a complication. There is nothing inferior or demeaning about it. Every surgeon will have a degree of complication. Be honest about it. See what you can do to correct it. I've had a situation where there was a patient who had a perforation, DU perforation closed by another surgeon. Okay, 2 days later, the patient got worse and he asked me to see the patient as a second opinion. And I said, this patient has leaked again, sir. We should reoperate. That person, this was years ago, I said, no, you can't tell them that it is leaked. Just leave it alone. We'll give him some antibiotics. Patient was dead 4 days later. And nothing happened. Nobody questioned. In those days, not even this, even the consumer court was not very active. This was many years ago. But what happened was that I couldn't sleep for 5 days. So I knew that the patient could perhaps have been saved. And we threw up that chance, and I was a very young surgeon, new in this country. And I felt so bad, I couldn't sleep for several days. That is integrity. I think you should have integrity. What is compassion? Anas, what is compassion?
So not exactly sympathy, sir, but
Okay, very different from sympathy. Yeah, you're
like
right.
an attachment or
No, compassion is putting yourself in the other
sir.
person's shoes.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
something happens, patient says something, does something that you don't understand or you get angry about. But then you have to, if you're a compassionate person, you put yourself in that person's shoes and then say, look, why is this person doing this, which is perhaps obnoxious, perhaps bad? And maybe you get an explanation. Okay, maybe you disagree with that behavior, but at least you're not overly angry or furious about this person. You do not react in a way in which it hurts the person. You may still disagree and you may say, I don't want to treat you, go elsewhere, but you're not nasty to that person. So compassionate behavior will endear you to the other person. Most of them. There are exceptions to this. Don't quote. I know you'll have hundreds of quotes, instances, not 100, at least tens, where in spite of being compassionate, somebody has kicked you in the cheeks. They're all exceptions. But by and large, compassionate behavior and integrity helps you. All right. There is a study which said that the commonest reason, not in India, it was from the United States, the commonest reason that somebody sued a doctor for a complication was because the doctor did not tell the patient the truth. They tried to cover it with something. They tried to say it's not a complication, stories about that particular event. And the patient, somehow or the other, or the family gets to know this. And so they were very angry. They said, I want to teach you a lesson. When you have had a problem, you didn't behave with integrity. You are not truthful with me. So I'm going to sue you. So that has been the commonest reason people sued. It's not really money. Money is one of them, I agree, but that was not the commonest in that particular survey. And this is everything, at every level. The senior consultant must be a role model to all the people in his team who are junior to him. The registrar must be a role model to all the juniors under that person, and a junior most doctor can be a role model to the nurses and others. And a senior nurse with her compassionate care can be a role model to a doctor, to a young doctor. So it's not that hierarchy that is important, but a kind of behavior where inherently you're doing good, you're being compassionate, you're being honest, and everybody else will look up to you to be that kind of a person. Okay, and that, to me, this is an extremely important thing. And the last one, you got everything. As you have noticed, I put all the 7 virtues or all the 7 qualities of a professional. It's a calling. I'm not going to say more about it. How many people can have the satisfaction of saving somebody's life, for example? It's a great privilege, and a great responsibility comes with that privilege, and we must be up to it to deliver the goods when the time comes. Okay, so in short, even though our title says professionalism and ethics, and if you guys noticed when I just clicked in, I didn't have ethics in the very title, in the big title slide, because I had this in mind, that professional and ethics go hand in hand. They're inseparable. I've said this before in this talk, and I'm saying it again. So when you talk about medical ethics itself, a lot of it reflects on what professionalism is. Okay. And so we must bear in mind that these two phenomena go hand in hand, and we must learn both and practice both. First of all, to be good doctors. And when you do that, as I mentioned in one of my previous slides, it'll probably not 100%, but largely protect us, and it'll elevate the status of our profession. All right. It's 9:42. I'm definitely going to go beyond 10, so which I don't want to do. What I'll do is maybe in the next 10 minutes or 5 minutes, I'll talk about a little bit about medical ethics, and then we'll continue in the next class. Any comments from the students so far regarding professionalism? Anything to add or subtract, agree with, disagree with?
Sir, I have one thing to add.
Yeah,
What I feel is like, as you said, the best thing to protect ourselves is to, having this ethics, maintaining the professionalism. I think more than that, like the time that we give to our patient, like talking to them, and even if it is a small thing, if we talk to them and if we respond to them, have that proper eye to eye contact, that itself can, uh, alleviate a lot of issues, sir. I
agree,
think that these days patients want that kind of an attention, that they all expect that kind of attention from the doctor. That is what I feel, sir.
agree, agree. Ravi?
Sir, all that you have said so far is very utopian, and sometimes I wonder whether there are lots of people who do not follow, forget about a part of it, none of it, and they all seem to be thriving in the profession and doing extremely well. And then there are people who follow ethics and who are not doing so well. And so this brings the question, but then you have to be, I think, very steadfast about your principles and ethics, and they are there for the sake of principles. They are not conditional. They are not based on the situation. They are not based on the fact that, oh, I probably this time I will not follow it. I'll because it doesn't suit me. I think we have to be extremely rigid about it. Only then it becomes a principle. Otherwise, it is just transactional. So don't compare yourself to others when somebody is doing well and you are not doing so well. Yeah, because you are, for example, the commonest thing I can say is there is the fee for transactions or whatever they call it, brown envelope jobs, and this one I think majority of them take it, and patients are sent only to people who actually give that money. But if you don't, then you suffer in terms of your practice, especially now. But you have to be steadfast and say, this is how I am, and I will operate on patients who come to me, but not somebody who sends it to me because I give them money. So I think ethics is extremely difficult, but I think if you follow it, one, you will be very happy and you can sleep well at night, and also I think that is how you should be. I think that is the crux of the matter.
Absolutely, completely agree. And for the youngsters here, uh, I would like to say only two things. Ravi mentioned it, and I'm very strongly reiterating it. Do not compare yourself with others. That's the first thing. Second, money is not everything in life. And my friends have told me, because you have enough money, you're giving me this lecture. They've actually told me in my face, they're good enough friends, they're even today my friends. But they say, as you say, this is utopian, Lakshman. You keep lecturing about this. But my answer is only this. There was a time when I wasn't earning enough. Okay, I was barely surviving. All of us have gone through this, and everyone will at some stage. But our approach to our practice never changed. And that is what I believe, that's what makes us comfortable, gives us longevity. In terms as a professional, people very clearly, to take the example of Ravi, for example, I mean, the thing he quoted, there were many, many practitioners who would never send me patients because I never gave a kickback ever in my life. And one of their own relatives, wife, son, father, they needed surgery, they would come to me. Okay, I would operate on them, no questions, why are you not sending, whatever. And then very interestingly, they would send me 3 or 4 more patients afterwards, because they thought that because I would have done it free, I would always, even from the beginning, do it free surgery for dependents of doctors without insurance. So they would send me 3 or 4 patients, and then they know that they have paid their dues in that sense. Okay, and they would go back to sending it to somebody else who would give them a kickback. The reason I said this story is that none of that should ever affect us. We do what we're going to do because, as Ravi rightly put it, we can sleep well. And I've slept very well all these years. That's all that matters. Nothing else matters. So if you have that in mind, then you will find that everything else will fall into place. And that's a very important thing. Okay. So what is ethics? We talked about professionalism. Just to know how much you remember, Anas, tell me 3 or 4 things that stand out when we talk about professionalism.
So first, we like what professionalism is in terms of
Just 3, 4 points. Tuck, 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 reel it out.
so like we are following
Self-regulation.
self-regulation,
All
code
right.
of conduct,
Code of conduct.
like an appropriate degree of behavior, sir, and
Yes.
like having the appropriate skill.
Done. That's all I need. Yeah. Okay. Have the proper skill and knowledge, have the proper behavior, follow a code of conduct, and first one I said, which is the most important.
Self-regulation.
Self. That was my first slide, if you remember.
Yes.
Okay. That's all in it. So like that, can you tell me something about what medical ethics means to you?
Like ethics is more or less like following a like rules or regulations which one should follow in order to sort of maintain that level of professionalism.
All right. Anything else?
That's all.
That's it. There is nothing else. You're right. Okay. It's a professional conduct. It tells you more about how does it happen, and that is rights and duties of a physician to himself. That's your code of conduct, his patients, and his colleagues. Okay. Whatever set of rules, some put by yourself on yourself, some others put by society on you, some others put by lawyers on you, by the law of the land on you. They are different. Remember, the moral obligations are at a higher level than legal obligations. Legal obligations are a basic minimum. But if you want to be morally and ethically correct, you may have to reach a higher level. And perhaps the highest level is certain rules you put on yourself. Okay, nobody asks you or expects you to, for example, do free surgery on people. You are a private practitioner. You have told the world that you need to be paid for your work. Nobody gives you a salary. But then you just choose to say, okay, I'm not going to charge doctors. I'm not going to charge teachers, for example, who are doing human service to society. Okay, you have rules on yourself like that. That is again a good level of ethics. So what are the components of medical ethics? Some of it is in the definition, but we need to know a little bit more about it. So if I say, look, tell me 5 chapters in a medical ethics book, what would you say, Sanya?
Sir, are we talking about like pillars of
Sorry?
medical? Are we talking about like pillars of medical ethics?
No, that's pillars, but this is components. What are the top, broad topics that you cover under medical ethics? Okay, it's code of conduct, primarily. That's for yourself.
Okay.
Doctor-patient relationship. I told you some of it is in the definition. All right? That was in the definition. Doctor-doctor relationship. It was in the definition.
Yes, sir.
There are 2 other important things in ethics which are not mentioned in the definition. Can anybody take a guess about it?
So consent, is that?
No, not necessarily. Something which is an ethical dilemma for us all the time in our practice. Okay? Care of the terminally ill and death and dying. Okay? So if you look at any textbook that talks about code of ethic, medical ethics, these are the things that are usually mentioned. Okay? Next, we come to what you're saying. Okay. Okay. I was going to say, okay, can you name a few documents pertaining to medical ethics? From a long time to now, have you read about it? If you have read about it, you will know about these documents. What is one of perhaps the ancient document that you can think of?
The Code of Hammurabi.
Hammurabiginta haledi yadu. You're right. Hammurabi is one. Even before that, which we all talk about when we finish our MBBS.
Hippocratic Oath.
Yes, Hippocratic Oath, Code of Hammurabi. Anything else? How did the modern medical ethics thought process came about? How did people define the pillars that Sanya was talking about? World Medical Association, have you heard about it? In Geneva? Yeah, World Medical Association did that. Okay? And so we start from Hippocratic Oath, which said you must respect your teachers, you should not practice for gain, help if possible, but definitely do no harm. That's in your pillars. And respect other physicians. That's the doctor-doctor relationship. This was the essence of Hippocratic Oath. And then there are many, in between there are many documents, but I jumped for sake of time to the Oath of Geneva, which is from the World Medical Association, came in 1948. Similarly, it's all the same thing, but they added 1 or 2 things, respect, conscience and dignity, that's integrity and all that. Noble protection, but confidentiality was added. Okay, this was not initially thought of, but then we got into confidentiality. Again, that is important for understanding ethics. That was given importance to in 1948. And this was again added by that time, from the time of Hippocrates to our time, by 48, there were many, many differences of race, religion, and nationality. And so they all felt that doctors must go beyond that and give their service, irrespective of religion, race, and political belief. And this is the important thing. We mentioned it. This is a very interesting thing. Even under threat, what happened at that time? Remember, this was just after the Second World War. So doctors were going, as I told you, as a professionalism and high level, even at danger to themselves, operating in plague or during the plague or cholera epidemic or whatever. But then the problem that came was war. So there are hundreds of soldiers who are, thousands of soldiers who are injured. You need to have field hospitals in the front. Doctors cannot say, I won't go there, because there can be bombing and there can be war at their doorstep. But then they made a specific mention that even under threat of any kind, next comes the threat of, social unrest, for example. In our societies, it need not be just war. So you can think of many, many threats to you: physical, emotional, and monetary. Somebody says, I'll, stop your salary if you treat this person. Okay. If somebody says that, what do you do? The code of ethics. Again, we come to utopian world and real difficult situations. But the calling must be that, irrespective of all these threats, that will help people. All right. I will start, mention this, and we'll stop after this. Then I have some case scenarios and things like that where we can have a true discussion, and we'll have it on another day. So Sanya mentioned about pillars of medical ethics. What are they, Ainas? Do you know?
Yes, autonomy, sir,
Okay.
beneficence,
Yes.
justice, and
Yes.
non-maleficence.
Yes. You're right, but you got it wrong in the order. Okay. So I think non-malfeasance, do no harm, must be the first. Remember that. That's the ultimate. Do good if you can, beneficence. Justice, do the most good to the most number of people. When you have society, this non-malfeasance and beneficence applies to one-to-one interaction, one patient and one doctor. But as a doctor, you're also responsible to the community, to the society, in which case you will need to have justice in your mind. You must do the most good to the most number of people. And more recently, we have now included autonomy and confidentiality. Many people now, we must, it's again from doctor centric to patient centric. He is the owner or the boss of his body, and he has a right to decide what he wants done to that body and mind. So you cannot force your views. So your job is to suggest something which you think is good for him. If he refuses, don't get angry, leave it alone. Confidentiality, several things are told to you as a person, as a doctor, and you can't divulge that information to others. The ultimate example for this came in HIV. Okay. The husband comes and you detect HIV in him, and he tells you, you cannot divulge this information to my wife. You know that the wife is in danger because this husband is positive, but medical ethics is very clear. It says you cannot divulge that information, but you can beg, do whatever you want, fall at this patient's feet to say, please permit me to tell your wife. And if he relents and allows you to do it, then you can tell the wife, not otherwise. That is the ultimate example of confidentiality. All right. So I think what I'll do is, this is one slide that's very important. This is what I learned from my chief, Tom Duncan, as Ravi quoted one of his examples from his chief. This gentleman was very, very, very nice to me. He taught me my first hernia and my first appendix. Okay. Tom Duncan. He said, a decision that sees the patient as a near or dear one cannot be far wrong. The story goes like this. I had a patient who had a lot of pain in the abdomen. I'm a SHO. I didn't have a registrar. I was working as a registrar as well. Quite inexperienced at that stage. And I told him, I'm not sure whether I should open him or not, Mr. Duncan. He's writhing in pain. I've given him a lot of painkillers and he's not better. So he told me two things. One, He has needed so much painkillers. We used to give morphine those days, and still he is in pain. There must be ischemia. That's the first thing I had. If you have a lot of somebody needs a lot of painkillers pumped into him, then there is ischemic pain. So I'm quite sure this guy has a gangrenous bowel. So you must open it. The second reinforcing thought is that you think yourself whether if that person, is your father or brother or mother or sister, would you operate? And if the answer is yes, go ahead and operate. You will have no problems. Don't see him as a patient, but see him as a close relative. Based on those two criteria, I opened him and he had an internal hernia with a strangulated bowel. Okay. So that is a very simple ethical test, and it need not be in an emergency. You are sitting in the outpatients and wondering whether somebody with a hiatus hernia, esophagitis should get an elective surgery or not. You know what the book says, what literature says about what are the indications for surgery. And if you're still in doubt, just ask this question: if this person is my sister, would I operate on her? If the answer is yes, go ahead and operate. So that is the kind of simple ethical test that happens. I'll stop here. I will talk about informed consent. No, I'll talk. We know it. I've done enough of it. So I don't think I need to talk much. I'll just say that in every operation, every consent must be an informed consent. We have said it several times, so I don't have to explain it much. Explain the disease, give the choices that are available, mention the risks involved, mention the consequences of non-treatment. What happens if you don't do anything? And if there are any conflicts of interest of yourself, you must come up and openly say it to them. Okay, this is not very often. I don't think I have conflict of interest in anything generally, but the first four things I always tell my patients before I go for surgery. Okay, and so what we'll do is, this is another statement made by Kirstner to say that it is a sacred commitment. Please understand that goes beyond everything. We have mentioned this before. It's a repetition, but I'm repeating it because it has to keep on. We have to drum these things into our heads repeatedly. Okay, I'll stop here, and I have some case scenarios where you will do all the talking, and that will be in the next class. Okay, so comments and questions, if any, from the students first, and then closing remarks from Ravi. Yeah, go on.
So just about the threat we were talking.
Yeah.
Does that still has to be followed? So because nowadays the threat that we will be facing usually is in terms of violence.
Yes.
So when we suspect that there is a threat to us, should we still be there taking care of the patient as a part of humanity, or should
You're
we be
doing it,
careful
no?
about stuff?
You're doing it, no?
Yes, sir, we will be, but should we be is
You
what
should
I'm
be.
asking.
You should be. There's no doubt about it.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not
Yes.
saying go and commit harakiri, commit suicide by getting into a mob and getting beaten up.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, in the extreme example, some doctors are being beaten up. But what I'm saying is that threat is there every day, and you're doing it. You're there.
Yes, sir.
You're not said you won't do duties.
Yes,
So
sir.
that threat is there, and we have to do it. That's a part of life.
Okay, sir.
Obviously, nobody says don't take precautions. You have security. If you think that you're in a place where it is very dangerous, you have enough security around you. I know of
Yes.
certain casualty departments in the United States where there are regularly gun-toting guards doing the rounds because of threat of violence. Okay, it's a part of life. We don't see it here in this country. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Final comments from Ravi, and we close.
I think this is an extremely important lesson. I think probably the most important lesson that, as Sir said, you can learn surgery by textbooks. Probably now you have videos, you can learn all surgical aspects of it, the complications and everything. But unfortunately, this aspect of it is hardly ever talked in any forum for that matter. And I think we are fortunate that I think there are several surgeons in our group who practice this and who talk about it on a regular basis. I think Sir Lakshman sir is one, I am certainly one, and Dr. Mani Reddy is one. So we talk about all our experiences and how how we have dealt with it. And I think anecdotal examples I think stay in the mind. So I think it's good that you guys even if 10% of what is said here is followed by you people, I think it goes a long way in producing ethical and moral surgeons, apart from being very successful and efficient surgeons. I think that is the, and I think this needs to be reiterated and time again, so that this sits in our mind and in our hearts when we deal with our patients and deal with situations. I think it's very important.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. And Nitya, schedule another class fairly soon. If you can do it, later this week, it will be nice because 20th I'm away. But if
Okay.
it's difficult, we'll do it, after the 5th of February. Okay.
Okay.
See how it
Yes.
goes and we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you
Yeah.
and good night.
Okay, sir.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Good
sir.
night.
Thank you.